Campus Community Garden, or CCG for short, is a volunteer-based project located at the University of Windsor. The CCG is dedicated to building an interactive urban community through the collective production of locally grown organic food. The CCG was originally founded in 2010 by Rita Haas, a women and gender studies professor at the university who also had a background in biology and ecology. Haas and other team members built the garden on hard and fertile land that was once a residential property. Many volunteers and donors have helped transform it into a vibrant, fertile garden landscape that contains a variety of plants and animals. The garden is an ongoing project maintained by the expertise and contributions of university staff and students, high school students, and other members of the local community. Here at the CCG, we use urban gardening as a way to educate people about nature and sustainability, to foster environmental stewardship, and also empower people to grow their own food. We provide garden plots and gardening support to university students and community members who wish to grow food for themselves. We also give back to the Windsor community by donating fresh produce to organizations that help those in need, such as the Downtown Mission and the Women's Welcome Center. By providing garden plots to students and community members, as well as donating to community food banks, the CCG helps increase food security in the city of Windsor. More food security means that more people can have reliable access to affordable, nutritious produce that is part of a healthy, well-rounded diet. One of the unique features of the CCG is the use of permaculture to increase the growth of food crops in the garden. Permaculture includes practices that work with nature and not against it. One of the main goals of permaculture is to build a complex ecosystem, like those found in nature. This ecosystem is made of multiple layers that include soil, plants, shrubs, and trees. Creating and enhancing each layer in the garden can attract many types of beneficial animals and can help create a rich network of interactions between those plants and animals. One type of animal we want in the garden is called a pollinator. A pollinator is an animal that helps with a very important process called pollination. And pollination is the process of moving pollen from the male part to the female part of a flower. Let's take a look at this tulip. Do you see the long yellow stems inside the tulip? This is the male part of the flower, called the stamen. The stamen creates pollen, which is a fine yellowy powder. The structure in the center of the tulip is the female part of the flower, called the pistil. Once a pollinator carries pollen from the stamen to the pistil, this tulip can create seeds. These seeds then create the next generation of tulips to come. Let's take a look at this flower, the anemone. Can you tell where the stamen and the pistil are? This is the stamen, and this is the pistil. While some flowers just create seeds, other flowers turn into fruits or vegetables that we can eat, like the strawberry. Strawberries and other fruits and vegetables contain the seeds that create the next generation. Take a look at this last example, which is a tomato flower. Can you tell where the stamen and pistil are? This flower actually has a staminal cone, which is made of stamens that are fused together. The pistil is on the inside of the staminal cone. In nature, tomato flowers can sometimes become pollinated by a strong wind, but a certain pollinator, the bumblebee, is very good at pollinating this tricky flower, and others like it. The bumblebee uses a process called buzz pollination, in which it holds on tightly and buzzes its wings to shake the flower, which then releases pollen from the stamen to the pistil. But more on pollinators in a bit. A tomato flower is an example of a perfect flower because it contains both male and female parts. However, some plants have imperfect flowers, which are missing one of those parts. For example, zucchini plants have separate male and female flowers. The male zucchini flower has only a stamen and a thinner stem. The female flower has only a pistil and a young fruit at its base. Pollinators must carry pollen on their bodies from the stamen in the male flower to the pistil in the female flower in order to create zucchini. There are many types of pollinators that can help us produce fruits and vegetables in the garden. The most common examples are the bumblebee and the honeybee. But there are many other pollinators, such as wasps, ants, butterflies like the monarch and the painted lady butterfly, as well as hummingbirds, such as the ruby-throated hummingbird. While pollination is a very important process, it actually happens as a side effect of one of the main goals of pollinators: to collect food. Since flower nectar and pollen are their main food sources, it is essential to plant flowers in the garden that attract pollinators. It is important to make sure that these plants are also native. But what are native plants? And why is it important to have them in the garden? A native plant is a plant that is growing in a place where it naturally occurs. So for us, any plant that naturally occurs in southern Ontario is considered native. Native plants live in balance with other plants and do not dominate over an area. In contrast, a non-native plant is a plant that is growing in a place that it does not naturally occur. For us, this would include any plant that is not from southern Ontario. Non-native plants are usually spread by humans to other areas. Non-native plants can become invasive and then dominate over plant life. It is important to use native plants in our gardens to conserve our local habitat. If we choose to use non-native plants, we need to make sure that they are not invasive and will allow other plants to thrive. We have planted many native flowers in the CCG that help feed pollinators, such as purple coneflower, black-eyed Susan, New England aster, tall coreopsis, tall goldenrod, and more. Common milkweed is another native species present in the garden. Milkweed flowers are very aromatic, which makes them a very popular food source for pollinators. This plant is especially important as a food source and a host plant for the monarch butterfly throughout its life cycle. Monarchs typically lay their eggs on this plant, which then hatch into monarch caterpillars. The young, hungry caterpillars feed only on the leaves of the milkweed plant. When the caterpillars are ready, they can form their chrysalis on the stems of the milkweed. Once the adult butterflies have emerged, they feed on the pink milkweed flowers that bloom in the early summer. By having a variety of plants that provide food and shelter, we attract many pollinators that help us produce food crops and seeds in the garden. Inevitably, not all animals help us grow our plants. In fact, many of them eat our food crops. These animals are classified as pests. Pests include animals that are not favorable to the health and growth of plants in the garden. There are many types of garden pests, such as aphids, which are small, sap-sucking insects, snails, which eat a wide variety of plants, and tobacco hornworms, which eat the leaves and fruit of tomato plants and can also camouflage well within them. There is a group of animals, however, that can help keep pests at bay. Predators. Predators are animals that naturally prey on other animals. Predators in the garden can include the spider, ladybug, centipede, praying mantis, and parasitoid wasps. This group of wasps oftentimes inject their eggs directly inside pests. The pest then serves as a host until the young wasp is ready to emerge. That's rough. So how do we attract predators to the garden? Well, you guessed it, plants. Certain plants can provide predator insects with the shelter they need to survive and lay their eggs, as well as produced nectar that they can consume as an alternative food source. Plants that attract predator insects include fennel, wild carrot or Queen Anne's lace, common yarrow, dandelion, and lemon balm. Insect-eating birds such as wrens and robins are also important predators in the garden because they consume large amounts of insects and feed them to their young hatchlings in the springtime. We try to attract birds with birdhouses, which provide shelter and protection from their predators. The CCG also has a variety of fruit-bearing trees and bushes, such as black currant, highbush cranberry, and red osier dogwood that serve as an alternative food source for birds, particularly in colder seasons when insects are scarce. Predators help naturally control the number of pests in the garden, which allows our food and other plants to be healthier and more productive. One of the key layers of the garden is soil, the medium in which all plants are grown. It is crucial to maintain healthy living soil so the garden can continue to produce successful crops for many years to come. One of the ways we achieve this is by creating compost in-house. Compost is a dark, nutrient-rich soil that is made from broken down organic material such as leaves, grass clippings, and food scraps. We add these components to a wood bin where worms and microorganisms such as bacteria slowly break down the organic material into finished compost. Finished compost is then added to garden plots and gives plants a strong dose of nutrients essential to their growth. Adding compost to the soil also improves soil structure so that it can easily hold the correct amount of moisture, nutrients, and air. In the garden, we also have nutrient-rich plants that can benefit the soil. Let's pause to hear about it from Chris Reed, one of the founders of the CCG.
Now, all of the plants we have in the garden, just like in a developed ecosystem, work together. So we've purposely chosen plants that have a number of functions that can benefit everything that we're trying to grow here. So it's kind of creating this vibrant ecosystem with diverse insect life and plant life that supports the food that we grow in these center rows over here. Now, so if we look at something like the comfrey, it's kind of a nondescript plant, but it has a number of uses. It's got antiseptic qualities, so the sap in it helps with healing wounds and whatnot. But more importantly for our garden, I suppose as a gardener you can make use of it for that. But in terms of the soil, it has very deep tap roots and it mines minerals that are important to plant growth, like potassium. So instead of going to all the trouble of hauling plants and materials to make big compost piles and stuff, what we're using in this garden is very simply letting the plants do the work for us. So this plant, from time to time, we tear the leaves off and toss it on the soil surface, and you'll notice that we have litter around the soil surface. It starts to replicate what you see in a forest floor. Now, when you do that, when you keep that organic material right on the soil surface like that, you're also creating habitat for microorganisms, insects that are beneficial to the life of the soil. They help to, right in place, break all this organic material down and in a gradual way make the nutrients accessible to the plants we're growing. Similarly, we have a yarrow plant over here. We've got lots of yarrow growing around the whole perimeter. That's another plant that mines micronutrients. It's pretty, and it also attracts insects. So it's got multiple uses. It feeds beneficial insects that we're trying to attract to the garden, and also by cutting the foliage back and leaving that on the soil surface, you're getting different types of micronutrients going in the soil.
Comfrey and yarrow can also be added to the compost pile, which makes the finished compost even higher in nutrients. The CCG is completely organic and does not use chemical fertilizers, pesticides, or other artificial products that may negatively impact the long-term health of the soil. We also use other creative tools to help improve soil and plant health at the CCG.
When I mention layers of things, we certainly are looking at the soil as the beginning layer. We've done a lot of work on that. We use a no-till approach so that we're not disrupting worms and other beneficial microorganisms that are getting going in the soil. We've introduced a beneficial fungus that helps with the structure of the soil and actually helps with open up roots so that the nutrients can penetrate them. The little fibers of the fungus serve their function in that way.
By using compost and wood chips around the garden, we have created a carbon-rich environment which allows many fungi to continue to thrive. All of these tools and methods help the garden to have healthy soil and very healthy plants. The campus community garden can give people an opportunity to learn how to grow their own food while connecting with nature and the local community. The permaculture practices we use in the garden follow the underlying principle that complexity equals balance. That is, the more complexity we have in the garden, the more it becomes a balanced and productive landscape. We have created this complexity by building up different layers in the garden, including the soil, plants, shrubs, and trees, which attracts many forms of wildlife. Animals can perform very important tasks, such as flower pollination and pest control. So the more wildlife there is in the garden, the healthier it is. The garden has come a long way since its founding in 2010.
When you look around and see all this biodiversity around us, this was barren, compacted clay and rubble, and we've had to do a great deal of work on just rehabilitating the soil that's been in place here. And we've concentrated that on these narrow beds.
The CCG has been maintained over the years by continuous efforts of many volunteers, like you. The garden is truly a group effort and shows the growth that is possible when people work together and work with nature too. For more information about the campus community garden, please visit our website at www.uwindsor.ca/garden. You can also follow us on Facebook at UWindsor CCGP or our Instagram at CCG UWindsor. Thanks for watching!